I think what you're describing and the spiritual part of prayer is self-reflection. It's about thinking of yourself as a moral being and your place in the world in relation to other people. And, I could say judging yourself, but then I feel like saying judgment feels much more like an act of right and wrong. It's the opposite of going with the flow. It's the opposite of being tolerant. So when I say I'm my worst judge, it's a lack of understanding and intolerance with yourself. So I think I'm extremely self-reflective. I've always been since I was a preteen. Diaries are here for that. That's what they're here. That's what they're made for. And then some people become writers because of diaries.
I apologize for any mispronunciations that you're about to hear. That was Brazilian writer-director Anne Pinheiro Guimarães. We were discussing the song I'm No Pillar of Salt, which was inspired by Psalm 96. I'm Shep Rosenman. This is The Rest is Commentary, where we discuss what songs inspired by the Psalms inspire in my guests. Anne was born to an American sociologist mother and Brazilian diplomat father. She spent her formative years traveling extensively before pursuing her education in France, where she completed classe préparatoire at the prestigious Lycée Henri IV and earned a master's degree in history from the Sorbonne before transitioning to film studies and screenwriting. Her multicultural upbringing shaped her artistic perspective. Her work explores themes of sexuality, identity, and personal transformation. Anne's films have been finalists at some of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. Most important to me, Anne and her husband Vicente Amorim are friends as well as clients. In this episode, we discuss the difference between being reflective and being judgmental, dealing with judgmental people, strategies for not being judgmental, being kind to yourself, where creativity comes from, strategies to add juice to your creativity, and so much more. Let's start off by listening to I'm No Pillar of Salt. You sit there in judgment every single day, oblivious to how I feel. You cut me down like prey. I'm no pillar of salt. Sing a new song. It's time to change your default. Sing a new song. You pretend you know me. We both pretend you care. Then you tell me what I should think. You breathe it out like air. I'm no pillar of salt. Sing a new song. It's time to change your default. Sing a new song. I need you to hear me now. I pray you'll be quiet long enough to listen to the calm before the storm that christens this whole damn world in a brand new day. In a brand new day. I write you a get well card. You tear it all to shreds. You say put it back together. Here's a needle and a thread. I'm no pillar of salt. Sing a new song. Time to change your default. Sing a new song. Sing a new song. Sing a new song. Sing a new song. Sing it. You've done a bunch of interviews, so
I've never done a good one. I wish this is horrific to say, but I wish I were Jewish, and I've been saying this for 20 years. And in part, I am Inquisition Jewish because it's known, my Brazilian side, my Brazilian last name, all they say in Portugal, in Portuguese, every last name that's the name of a tree or the name of an animal are those who converted not to be prosecuted. So on both sides of my grandparents, Brazilian grandparents, I have a tree and a wolf. Literally, it was wolf from the forest, one last name. And the other one is pine tree.
So that's Pinheiro is the
Pinheiro
pine
is a
tree.
pine tree. And then my grandfather's side, and the lost last name from like marriage is da Silveira Lobo. Silveira is Sylvester. It's from the forest. Lobo is wolf. And I love that last name. When I was young, I was like, why don't I have that last name? I lost it. I didn't get it.
Here's what I'm going to say to you. First of all, and I talk about this in other episodes, my view is if you want to be Jewish, you're Jewish. My view also is that Jewish is not only a bloodline hereditary thing. It's a state of mind. So, I'm going to say you're Jewish, even if you don't have you're steeped in the background.
I love that. I've heard you say that before. And when you said it the first time, I heard it the first time, I was like, yes, okay, count me in. I'm in.
Anytime you want to do Jewish learning, you let me know. We can set up what's called a chavrusa, which chavrusa is the classic form of Jewish learning. Not that it doesn't happen in other forms of learning, but it's the classic way that Jews study Torah and Talmud and all these things. It's one-on-one learning, and the root of the word is chaver, which means friend. And the concept is we are going to engage the text and that which is greater than ourselves as friends. And friends care about each other. That means it's my job to help refine your understanding of the text, and it's your job to help refine my understanding of the text. And therefore, we challenge each other with respect and love and all that good stuff. And we walk a bay.
It's almost like Aristotle.
Yeah.
It's like a relationship to religion, which is something that I did not grow up with, and I'll tell you later. But it's very spiritual. It has the books, but it's more about a philosophy and the exchange and engaging in life with people and in life.
Well, but it's people and life in a way that, look, one can engage in life without a philosophy. I had this debate with my brother-in-law. So just for context, my sister's name is Frady. She's ultra-Orthodox, which in Hebrew is Haredi. So she's Haredi Frady. Her husband, his name is Josh. And, he grew up Jewish, but not like Orthodox like we did. He came to it later in life, and he's deeply, deeply passionate about learning. And this probably goes back to when my kids were very little, maybe, 2004, 2006. We were having a conversation about philosophy and theology. And he said, what do you need philosophy for? What do you need theology for? You have the Torah, and that's all you need. And I was struck by that. On the one hand, I was like, okay, that pisses me off. You can't read the Torah without having a philosophy about it. You can't live life without having a philosophy about it. And then I was like, that's beautiful. It allows him to live in accordance with the way his rabbi's teaching him. And that in and of itself is a philosophy. So, he just has different language about it, and that's okay too. But the reason why my eyes lit up when you said it's like Aristotle is when I was in college and studying to be a rabbi, I went to a yeshiva, a place of study called Yeshiva B'nai Torah, also known as Rabbi Chait's Yeshiva. And Rabbi Chait was he had three areas of interest. He was a Freudian psychotherapist. He was a Maimonidean. Maimonides is a 12th century scholar from Spain, where your forebears probably came from.
And it's a hospital in Brooklyn.
Exactly. And his third leg of the stool was Aristotle. He was an Aristotelian expert. So we got so much Aristotle and Plato, but mostly Aristotle. I probably forgot just how influenced by Aristotelian concept I was and am. But, of course, we went into Bertrand Russell and all sorts of other philosophers. We didn't have some of the modern people we do today. But anyway, it still remains an area of interest of mine. So anyway, you want to start a chavrusa with me or you, me, and Vicenci, and if Shari will come, happy to do it. You've had a chance to listen to that. What did it inspire in you?
Well, I listened to it 7 times. And my first question, because when we originally started talking about getting a song and talking about it, I remember that I said, Shep, choose something that, inspires you, that, you pick the song as opposed to my picking a song or sending, several songs. So the first thing, I was so curious, I would press play and I'm like, what is it going to be about, So it inspired a lot of curiosity, and this might come across as very narcissistic, but it's like, what in this song makes him think of me? And if it did, or if it was just like random, let's do this one because I'd like to talk about this song. So that's a question I have for you. That was the first thing that it inspired. And then I read the psalm and I was like, it's so interesting how the song itself, aside from, the reference to Pillar of Salt, I was like, this doesn't sound very religious. It doesn't sound very spiritual. It sounds like a love song. It sounds like a missive to, a lover, like, you don't pay attention to me. So I thought that was very interesting and funny. It was like, you judge me so much and you don't even listen. So there's even a line where it's like, I pray you'll be quiet long enough to listen. And I'm like, I am a talker. I do interrupt a lot. My husband complains all the time. Daughters are talkers, and in the car we have this thing where people it's almost like a classroom. We're like, can I say something? Can I say something? So we're always interrupting each other. And I'm like, oh, that is it fits like a glove. It didn't feel very spiritual, but it felt like very close to heart for me.
So those are both great questions and comments within them. I'm going to start with why this song for you. And there are multiple answers to that. The first is, I don't know. I go through the songs and I'm like, I think we'll have good conversation about this. I think this will move her in some way. That's to me, the spiritual piece of this. There are things we do that we just don't know why we do them. Hopefully when we do things that we don't know why we do them, it results in a positive, moving experience. This is something that we can really kind of explore in depth because you're a writer, you're a director, you're deeply immersed in the creation of things that are intended to move people. And that's what songwriting is. That's what performance is. My job as a lawyer is not intended to move people. It's to help people achieve their goals so that they can move people. So this is a very different expression for me, but lawyering has the same impulse. I like to say we have a quiver or a toolbox and we have to pull out the right tool. When am I going to be angry? When am I going to be gentle? When am I going to be a supplicant? When am I going to be a fan? What approach am I taking in a negotiation? And sometimes you think about it and sometimes, thinking about it doesn't get you an answer and you just go with it and see what happens. And that too is inspiration. This ties back to what we were talking about before. If you believe in something greater than yourself, I happen to call it God, then you get to say things like I'm about to say, which is some of that inspiration when you're writing the script. What am I going to write about? What dialogue am I going to give this character? Am I going to tell the actor to do it this way or that way, angry or soft? There's a component that's logical, but there's also something that we're pulling from the ether that is inspiration. And it's no accident that the root of the word inspiration is connected to respiration, right? It's something that's common. It's out there. It's every day. And we just have to tap into it. And I really feel like that happens in the songwriting process for me. And perhaps it's because I like to not take responsibility for a song that's just bad. I like to say, I am just doing my best to translate what it is that I'm tapping into. I read the text inspires something in me, and something comes out. Sometimes, this one is a song that riffs off the text in the tiniest of ways. Sing a new song. That said, the basic concept inhabits the song. Others, you have I have 10 pages of sources that went into crafting the song. For me, in writing the song, specifically because it was a fearless songwriting challenge, which means we have theoretically the whole thing done in under 90 minutes. That's the first part of the answer. Is I don't know why I said Anne will connect with this song, but I just had this feeling that you would. But then, because inspiration is not enough for me, I did spend all that time in Chait's Yeshiva, where the focus was on logic, in particular Aristotelian and Maimonidean logic. I had to find ex post facto rationalizations for why this is a good choice for you. And from our prior conversations, we've talked about one's own judgment in creativity and about the people around us. And we've talked about being heard and seen in the world. And based on those conversations, not that I remember any of the details of those, I had this recollection. I was like, okay, Stam, generally Anne has a lot to say, but I know that she'll have a lot to say on those topics. So that answers the first one. And I hope we get to talk about that, because I feel like I've talked enough on question one, and I'm going to turn it back to you, including...
I'm taking notes.
Awesome.
I'm taking notes.
Including by starting to ask you, why did you think I picked this song for you?
That's hilarious. Maybe I said it in my question. I'm a talker. And then when I hit on, I hope you'll be quiet long enough so I can say what I want to say, I'm like, woo, I think he picked up on something very subtle, which maybe I have or not, put out there in front of you yet. But yes, that's what came across. I was like, okay, I'm not too much of a judge. And I judge a lot.
I think we all do.
I self-judge. If we talk about it, if we have talked about it before in our creative process, the judgment, I think our worst enemy in our creative process is ourselves. In any case, I am my first judge and my worst judge. I'm my most harsh judge. So what you were saying is so interesting, because like you were talking about like, oh, how did I, pick the song? Instinct. I kept thinking about like, oh, he's talking about his instinct. So you use your instinct to go look for a song, but instinct is the sum experience, right?
Right.
So it's all your experience. It's all unconscious, but there's something there. Most of the time you don't rationalize it, but there's something there. And it's a little bit spiritual. So we feel like it's spiritual because we don't grasp so well where it's coming from. So it can be perceived creatively as spiritual. So like, what is inspiration? It's like listening to yourself and letting that flow. You were talking about how you write. Your songwriting is very close to any other form of expression, is letting down your judgment enough to listen to yourself, let it flow, and just being kind enough to yourself. And there's also this line of thought, I read a lot about creativity, and I've read this wonderful book recently. Rick Rubin wrote a book. Did you read that?
It's on my nightstand. It's my next book to read.
I read it in a day, in the morning. It's very spiritual, and it's so beautifully put. And it's about, listening to yourself. And I think your song, like talking about it, is all, when I first said it's not spiritual, it is. It's about creation, judgment and creation. And there's this line I was going to say, a line of thought about people who think about creativity. Some say, put in the work and your creativity will flow. You have to sit down and work. And others speak of muses, like we were talking about Aristotle. Lots of people speak of muses today only to free people from the judgment. So it's not on you. Just do it. It's not on you. It's not your problem.
Right.
Just let it out. Okay. You have nothing to do with this, for good or bad. If it comes out great, also not you. But if it comes out crap, it's not you either. So just let it go. So I feel it's something I think and I read a lot about, and I love talking about it. I love reading about it, and it is so mysterious. That's what goes back to spiritual. So mysterious how, and then when you're in the flow, all it means is like you just let it out, and it feels really, when you're writing, it feels like it's not you. It's going through your pen, and then when I'm writing, you said dialogue. Once you know your characters enough, which is also a quest, because it's almost like if you put it out of your body, it's not something you do. Once you know your characters enough, there's just a certain way they will talk, and there's certain things they'll say, certain things they won't say. And if you don't know your characters enough, it's brutal work because it's like rocks coming out of their mouths, and it's all wrong and it's bad. So
I love that description, and I can so relate. It's the same in songwriting.
right. I was listening to Dolly Parton interview the other day and just explaining how like she went on to being a solo artist. I forget every detail, but what stuck with me is that she wrote Jolene and song number 2 on the same record, her first solo record, in 15 minutes.
Huh.
And then she explains like what was going on in her life. It's just right. And then there's something in the universe that just connects where and that's about listening. It's about just making yourself a vessel.
Right.
You know, for something. That's why they say like ideas are in the zeitgeist. Ideas are in the air. You just have to listen and make yourself a vessel. And if you don't act upon it, somebody else will.
Right.
There'll be another vessel and somebody else will go like, and as you were talking, just one more thing I wrote down here is you said, oh, did you get a chance to listen? I listened to it several times. And now with a little bit of distance, am I crazy in my brain, I'm putting it in a special place musically. And I'm so bad at music. I'm tone deaf, no pitch. My daughter wants to be on Broadway and I can't help her because I can't hear what she's saying. But I'm putting this song specifically with a song I love, which is Johnny Cash's Hurt. There's a rhythm in there. There's something there that they're cousins.
I see that. I mean, I've listened to a lot of Johnny Cash. I have a very, very wide range musically. I'm all over the place. I listen to a lot of folk. Country is a fairly recent thing for me, but when I was young, I would watch Grand Ole Opry and I would listen to Johnny Cash and do all that stuff. When I forget who it was. It might have even been Rick Rubin. Somebody kind of restarted Johnny Cash's career.
Yes, it was Rick Rubin.
I listened to that over and over, and that made me go back to listen to his early stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me. That's kind of in my subconscious on a very, very deep level. I think that connects back to this zeitgeist concept, this vessel concept. I find that the songwriting process requires knowing when to let it flow and knowing when to let it go and knowing when to retool. And the rewriting process I find to be the hardest part because there's all these factors at play. On the one hand, especially given the project where I want to stay connected to the song, like if the worst line in the song is the line that I've grabbed from the psalm, am I allowed to change it or do I have to give up the song? Right? Or do I find another psalm that tells this story and recast the song in the light of the other psalm? I have all this anxiety and, I'm generally an anxious person, but I'm also a very calm person. I too let things flow and roll, but I grind through decisions. Anne is pointing at herself in the same moment.
I am very calm and very anxious.
Most of my clients who are very anxious and have high energy and it's up there. But some of them are, and this is true of my friends too, some of them are like us. And then there's this other category of high anxiety people who you can see them clamping down and the massive control they're exerting to manage their anxiety in whatever the moment is. And that's always fascinating to watch. And I'm sure there's a million other styles. You said you are very judgmental of yourself. In fact, I think you said you're your own worst judge. And I wanted to...
I'm in recovery. I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm recovering. I'm a recovering judge.
Well, so I look forward to when you get to say what Shari says, which is that you're a recovered judge. She refers to herself as a recovered attorney.
Yeah, aspirations. I aspire to become a recovered judge.
So the reason I pointed it out, though, and it goes back to this conversation about the Jewish context, and I'm sure that this is not true of Jews, biological Jews, trained Jews. I'm sure this is true of most humanity that is oriented to thinking about themselves and figuring out their place in their world and the relationship with other people. But the reason I'm mentioning this is there's a particular Jewish thing that's connected to this. Prayer, it's an English word. I'm sure it has a Latin root. Not that I know what it is, but I'm sure it has to do with praising God and encountering God. We can look it up if you want. But the Hebrew word for prayer is lehitpalel, or tefillah. Tefillah is the closest equivalent to prayer, but the verb to pray is lehitpalel, which is in the reflexive. And lehitpalel is the self-reflexive. And it literally means to judge oneself. It threads through various things we've been talking about, including the notion of being a vessel. When you are encountering God, you encounter yourself. When you encounter yourself, you have the potential to encounter God, or taking it out of God language, something greater than yourself. Where do you fit in the world? What are the concepts that you want to be remembered for? What are the concepts that you want to be known for? Who are the people you're curious about? What are the communities you want to help? What are the communities you want to stay away from? Or who are the people you want to stay away from? And I think that all of those things on a very not a technical level, because this is not true of traditional Jewish prayer, which gives you a script, but on a very deep level, what the rabbis who put all this together were saying is, think about all those things. Where do you sit in relationship to the community, to that which is greater than yourself, whether it's community or God or, your ego or, your id or.
I think what we're saying are two things. So interesting, because I think what you're describing and the spiritual part of prayer is self-reflection. It's like self-reflective. And we were talking about philosophy earlier. It's about thinking of yourself as a moral being and your place in the world in relation to other people. And, I could say judging yourself, but then I feel like saying judgment feels much more like an act of right and wrong. It's the opposite of going with the flow. It's the opposite of being tolerant. So when I say like I'm my worst judge, it's like basically intolerance with, it's a lack of understanding and intolerance with yourself. So I think I'm extremely self-reflective. I've always been since I was a preteen. Diaries are here for that. That's what they're here. That's what they're made for. And then some people become writers because of diaries. And I firmly believe that. I mean, the more you are able to put your thoughts in words and self-reflect, it also makes life easier because it takes it out of your heart. So you can look at it from a different perspective. And I see judgment as something like when we like Judgment Day, the word carries so much. And the way I put it at the beginning is like, yes, I am my worst judge in that sense. But at the same time, spiritually, I am very self-reflective. Right. They're very similar words, but I think they're different experiences.
Is it possible that they are the same process, but when you cross a certain threshold and stop being reflective and instead you start judging yourself, it's the moment where you've gone too far in the exercise? Is that possible?
I have high expectations, but I go with the flow. Right. High expectations is very rigid.
Yeah.
It's a very rigid way to going with the flow. It's more generous.
You have a fascinating background. As someone who's lived in different countries and been immersed in different cultures, were the experiences different, or is it kind of the same? Like in each different place, you have your judgmental people, you have your people who won't listen.
Completely different.
Can you talk about the differences?
I can only speak to my experience, and my experience was growing up. And growing up is something very different from being an adult. Moving around a lot as an adult, you carry your identity, your formed identity with you, so you can compare things better. When you're growing up, and I moved around, when you're growing up, you're changing along the way, and your experiences change you, and especially you go to school. So your experience in the world is not with adults. It's not going to work. It is going to school and school systems. So it's very biased by the school system that you encounter along the way. Mm-hmm. And the school system, I feel, reflects the culture. I went to live in France in high school, not speaking a word of French. My father very eccentrically lifted up his arms and said, France, the best public schools in the world. And I'm like, what? I'm going to French school? I don't know what they're saying. Great, you'll learn. So it was torture for a year or two. And then I learned French and it was great. But the French school system is extremely rigid, especially in regards to their respect for their own culture, for their past. So it doesn't really instill the opposite. Now my girls are going to school in the States, and I went when I was very, very young in American culture, and therefore in the school system, broadly speaking, individualism, self-starters, your individual tastes, like you have the clubs in high school, everything is taken into account. The culture accepts a more diverse type of person. So you will have somebody who's an athlete, then you'll have another one who likes musician. In the French school system, only in the school system, It is by the book. And if you don't learn what they're teaching, you are, if not automatically, you are ejected from the system. You have to find your own path on your own. The system doesn't give you outlets.
Right.
And I find that there's so many outlets here. And in Brazil is a mix of both, but more towards the French style in the only sense, and not culturally, but what is offered to students at school, which is everybody studies the same thing. Everybody has to pass the same exam. It doesn't matter if you like chemistry, 12th grade chemistry or not, you have to learn it. And whereas here, different from Brazil, Brazilian private schools, I see my daughter, for instance, she discovered her love for law and mock trial and public speaking. And she, not only does she have the opportunities to do it, she discovered she likes to play the guitar. She's studying music. She had the opportunities not only to learn things that are specific to her interests, but excel in them. She wins awards, and it really works on her self-esteem. And that doesn't exist in Brazil, and it doesn't exist in France.
I want to put this in context. You have this experience in California, one of the most kind of liberal and progressive states, and the California school system.
I went to school in New York growing up.
You did, but your kids, I was talking, right? So
right.
You have both of those experiences. How different was the New York experience than the experience you're seeing in your kids?
Well, I don't think it's valid to say. First, my experience was in the past century. It's not even in this century.
Uh-huh.
That's how old it was.
Fair enough.
And it was elementary school. But I know that the high school system has not changed that much in the sense where you have system of credits and you can take different classes. You have AP classes, you have this and that. You can actually cater a little bit to your interests.
Mm-hmm.
And it all ties into what we were saying. I feel that the French culture, and it's hard to compare Brazil because it's so specific, but the French culture is more, like we were saying, it would be under the column of expectations and judgment, where there's a flow, there are outlets for you. You're not automatically considered a loser if you're not great in chemistry in 10th grade.
Right. Okay, I see that. You were talking about how when you're writing in your diary, it's just coming out of your heart. I find I do a lot of journaling. I do a lot of object writing. I find that it's hard to get out of my head. How do you get your heart on the page rather than your head on the page?
That's a question I've been asking myself for like 20 years because I journal, and I journal as an exercise of mental health and of self-reflection, also of memory to, I don't want to forget this. To get out of my head, I mean, I've done therapy before. And I recall I went to 2 different therapists in different moments of my life. And I recall the first one, Freudian, he'd be quiet, said nothing. And I'd be there like yapping away. And I'm like, I get home and I'm like, I just wrote my diary out loud. Why am I paying for this? So the second time around, what I said to her, first thing I said was like, I need feedback because I don't want to write my diary out loud. So I would say, 10 sentences, I'd turn to her and say like, what do you almost aggressively, what do you think? Which I found very, very helpful because it's very helpful to get somebody else's perspective on whatever it is you're going through.
It's chavrusa.
It's very hard to get out of your own head.
Yeah. Often my journaling is like yours, diary-like, processing emotional stuff. And I don't do it every day. Like there are periods where I do it every day. There are periods where I just don't do it. And then there are periods where I want to journal and I go in and out of that. But when I find that either too in my head or when I need to write a song, I have a variety of tricks up my sleeve to get out of my head. One of them is I will spend 10 minutes just journaling in that kind of transactional way, just get shit out of my head. Like my timer will go off and then I will say, or sometimes 20, depending on what the issue is. And then I will say, okay, stream of consciousness, go. And then your mind panics. What am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? Right? And then you just start writing. And if that doesn't come, I just write whatever the first word is that comes to my mind, I just write it over and over and over until my mind lets go.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great one for me. And another one, sometimes I still find that even in that, I'm too in my head. So I just stop. I scan what I did and I find whatever seemed most interesting to me and I do a mind map. You take a central concept and then you write down things that are connected to it. Now, putting it in a creative context, pick a word or a phrase.
Oh man, that's too hard. I'm so bad at these. I'd never.
Pick an object in your room.
Oh, okay, pen.
Pen. Okay. So a mind map may put the word pen in the center, and then you'll branch it off to the right and say ink, paper.
Oh, related words.
Exactly. And then on the left side, it will say emotion, creativity, other concepts, right? Or pen, the Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration of Independence will get you to slavery.
That's good for songwriting.
It's good for anything. If I'm stuck on something, I use the exercise. And this is a great way of kind of mining what's going on in my head if I'm not clear, if I'm too self-judgmenty, if I've crossed that line, or if I don't feel like I have anything to say, inevitably I find things. I was at song school and there was a prompt to write something about water. So there's a tributary, a river that goes through song school in Lyons, Colorado. And, I was like, water, rushing, rocks, river, Montana, because we had just been in Glacier Park, whitewater rafting, nursing. Why nursing?
Word association.
Exactly. But you can use it in other ways. It's not just concepts. You can take whatever concepts you have and turn them into phrases. So water became nursing the river, which had two concepts for me. One, it's cleaning up the water. I didn't end up going down that road. What I did was I wrote a song about our guide in our whitewater rafting trip and how she reminded me of my kids, and she wasn't sure what she was going to do, and she wasn't sure if she was going to keep whitewater rafting. And I had this conversation where I said, I don't know you, but stay on the river for another summer. Well, she was like, do I do this and guide, or do I go to medical school? And I was like, medical school will still be there in a year. You're not going to be able to be a guide for the rest of your life once you become a doctor. So just don't miss out on this experience. I don't know what she did. I haven't stayed in touch with her, but Water became this song about this woman's choice. You thought a little bit that the singer is talking about other people. You thought you may have been a singer's subject because you talk a lot. I don't think you talk a lot. I think you have a lot to say, and it's good and valuable, and that's okay. There is a subject to this song. Actually, there are a few subjects to this song. I'm thinking of several individuals who have been in my life who are just nasty, judgy, and, they're also your best friends. Like, they're nice to you, they give you a hug, but there they are, like, in judgment that we're homeschooling, in judgment, this is when our kids were little, in judgment that I'm at this firm, at a smaller firm, not one of the big firms.
Did you feel the judgment, or was the judgment verbalized?
Yes and yes. There are people whom you feel it from. If I had to pick one person for this song to be about, it would be this particular person who was really sweet and always polite and always doing the right thing. But beneath that, man, did I know that this person was judging me, and I'm degendering it.
The person was rolling their eyes.
But not even. But like, you could see the jaw clenching. You could see the intake of breath. But like, oh, that's really interesting. But what this person was saying was, you're a fucking moron. We're not going to do that. This song was written to that character. And why we connected it back to sing a new song, I don't know. I think in retrospect, it's probably this. It's this line in verse 10, God judges people with equity, right? So all these judgy people, they're not judging people with equity. This thing that we aspire to, that I call God, that which is greater than ourselves, can look at each situation and say, Shep, I know you're trying. I'm not going to judge you negatively here. I'm not going to be harsh. I'm going to support you. And I'm going to be a good chavrusa and say, I know you wanted to do this in the same way that Liz was a good chavrusa. How about, are we still saying what you want to say if we write it this way? Right? Like, that to me is what human connection and relationship is all about, how we uphold and support and lift each other rather than cut each other down. And that's why I connected back to sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord. All the earth, all of humanity needs to learn how to not be so judgy.
Sounds like you're describing what a great editor should be.
I think so. I think we need to learn to edit ourselves and to edit each other.
But when you edit the other person, you're not judging, you're helping them on their journey for the best results possible and not putting them down.
That's exactly right. Having the encounters where you have these arguments for the sake of something greater than yourself, that's what enriches your life. And you then bring that back to your community and it impacts your community. Judaism continues to have a messianic construct. And there's the end of days line with Sodom and Gomorrah, and the world is going to be destroyed and it's going to turn into something that's not physical. But there's also this other thread that says that the end of days, the Messiah isn't going to come until we fix the world ourselves. And that's kind of my worldview. Come together right now. Over me is that which is greater than ourselves, to quote the Beatles. So that brings me to the second question, which is the song doesn't sound religious. Why do you think that is?
It's clearly religious from the start when it says judgment and that, we immediately go to religion. And then there's, there are references to pray and this and that. But when you say, I pray you'll be quiet long enough to listen. Okay. So you're not praying to God. You're just praying that in this relationship, listen to me.
Right.
It feels like a more down to earth relationship that has issues and you are trying to go through them. And I write you a get well card, but you're going to tear it. And then this is my question to you. Put it back together. Here's a needle and a thread. There are very many, religious references that, not even religious. I'll go back to the Greeks even. That's why I think there are these certain words in there that drew me away from the judgment. And it made me feel like it's talking about a relationship. Two people, very down to earth.
And it is. Whether it's a spouse, a business partner, a friend of yours who's always the same, it doesn't really matter. We all have people in our lives who are this way, where they're judgy, and they cut you down like prey. They may not mean anything negative by it. They may just feel like I'm entitled to make you feel like shit. Oh, I didn't mean to make you feel like shit. No, that wasn't my intent. You need to know that you fill in the blank. Smell bad, you lisp, or you say a lot and repeat the word you a lot, as I just did. And I can usually laugh it off, but what grants them the right to point that out to me if I haven't asked for it?
The only reason I say it feels like a romantic relationship, because it's also intense. It feels like it's talking about a relationship that is very meaningful to the person who's writing. So I would say even like, I'm no pillar of salt, religious reference.
Lot's wife.
Yeah. It's like, be loyal to you always. If you continue this way, I turn around. If you don't change, if you don't mend your ways. So it feels like it's an important relationship.
Yeah.
And therefore I went down maybe the romantic, the husband and wife always complaining, you don't let me talk, you don't listen to me.
I think you're right. I mean, in this particular song, Shari is not the subject, though, there are times where she's judgy and there are times where she will cut me off. It's a theme in our family. She was not the subject of this because she doesn't get to that place of inappropriateness. As a spouse, there's a level of appropriateness to cut people off from time to time and to judge a little bit. And there's trust there.
But I also think we don't write only what we feel, but we also can write what we imagine. Mm-hmm. We can imagine feelings. So I won't necessarily always write something that is true to my feelings and my immediate relations, but I can imagine being in a different relationship and I can imagine different feelings. And some of the feelings I have once in a while will migrate into something and grow in the imagined space, So I don't think if things have to be like, not even in my writing or like a song, never exactly true to fact.
Yeah.
It can be true to feeling. Sometimes feeling is imagined.
Yeah.
I can imagine feeling some way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I try to write songs that work on both the human level and the divine level. So You Sit There in Judgment is God, and it's the judgy person.
An important person in
Yes, exactly.
Like God is important. Because seriously, somebody who's judging me down the street, the person across the street, I don't care. I don't know them.
Right.
Doesn't mean you can judge all you want.
Right.
Now, judgment coming from somebody you hold in high regard, that's hard.
Yeah. How do you manage that when that comes up?
I was going to say something. Maybe you chose this song also because both me and Vicente, and you've met us as a couple. So it's a couple song. So maybe there's something there where instinctively it's like, oh, okay, couples.
Interesting. The truth is, like, when I think about this song, I really think about this person who oversteps their boundaries. And yes, you're a couple, but every encounter we've had with you guys as a couple is you're both respectful of each other. Even when you cut each other off, one of you says, oh, I'm so sorry. You guys have at least from the outside, a healthy love relationship with an appropriate amount of conflict. Conflict is inevitable. So you guys aren't the subject. I think I felt like you would appreciate the character I'm writing about and the scenario of being the subject of a person like this judging. I think that that's really the focus.
Oh, completely.
And I think Vicentia would too.
Completely also. You asked me, how do I feel about somebody who would be judgmental in my life? I'm trying to pinpoint. I tend, and I feel that if I think I'm going to say something, I'm going to think about it. And maybe in 10 minutes, I'll go back and say, nah, that's not it. But I tend not to care what people think.
I love that.
Let's say, I don't know, recently, oh, my big move here, we moved. I could care less what people thought about it. I could care less. This is my decision. I don't feel like maybe in 10 minutes, I'll say like, oh, I remember something that really pissed me off. But it's harder when it comes from a family member, especially from a parent. I love my father so much, great relationship with him, very judgmental, extremely. And he's the kind that will be both. He will be the one that you can read it on his forehead before he says anything. And because, we know him so well, I don't know, we can read the iris in his eye and he hasn't moved. And we know he's judging. And there's something about and then this is a whole nother can of worms, which is we were talking about couples. Now we're talking about, parents and, siblings and the dynamics. I think the worst judgment anybody could feel in life, and I try to do this as a parent only because I've seen it and I've self-reflected on it extensively in my journals, is the parental judgment. Because that's like God.
Right.
Parental judgment. And if you don't feel seen, or if you don't feel like one of your parents, both parents, whatever it is you have, is not on board with your decision, you have to be very, very, very mature psychologically to be able to go through with it regardless. Give you an example. I knew before I told my father that I was moving to the States that he would not be happy and he would judge it. He's very nationalist. He's like, Brazil, live in Brazil. At the age of 20, 25, 30, it would have been very hard. I'm not saying it's part of why I didn't do it earlier. It certainly isn't, but it might be a little bit. But it does come at a stage of my life where it's like, I know he's going to hate it. And that's where we change. And I feel so sorry for him not to be on board. But I have no feelings in regards to his judgment. It's like, okay, this is what I'm doing. He gave himself away because I told him before the pandemic hit. So our plans were halted. So one day out of the blue, he says, incredible. You have all these plans moving to the US and now a pandemic and you're not going anymore. I'm like, says who? I'm just waiting it out. And he was taken aback. So I think, speaking of judgment, I think the worst judgment you have to be very, very careful as a parent. Because that's judgment that will really, really change your life. I mean, your decisions, what you do. So I think I try to be very, very mindful of how I come across with my daughters.
Are there times where you think it's important for you to be judgy with your daughters? I mean, not judgy in that nasty way, but like...
Sure. I mean, philosophically, like morally. Oh, yes. There are certain things that I will not tolerate. And I don't even know if it's called judgment. But that's not judgment so much, is it? Judgment is like your decisions or what you want to do. Judgment and criticism go hand in hand. It's allowing that, when I say be mindful, it's like try to allow them to be as free as they can be, to discover who they are without my views of life being such an influence. For instance, I mean, I'll say from my experience, and I'm sure I've talked to other people. I mean, there are people out there who do not understand a path in life. They're rare people, but one happens to be my father. Doesn't understand a path in life that's not the one they took.
Mm.
They don't understand. You'll say, oh, he's in finance. He doesn't know what, although he's an intellectual. Like, no. Oh, go work in film. Nah. No. So judgment, very harsh. It's a very harsh way of looking at the world, and a more tolerant, comprehensive, more expansive.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. And I like to end these when I can with a blessing. And my blessing to you is that you continue to exercise the best kind of judgment without kind of crossing the line, and that you kind of grow tolerance, which for me, like tolerance is a hotly debated word, because one tolerates a lot, like bad behavior, people delivering things late. My blessing is don't tolerate the bad stuff, but live with, accept that which you can, but, continue to communicate respectfully and continue to be the joy that you and Vicente are. I think we have such deep affection for you guys because notwithstanding whatever's going on in the world, there's always a smile and there's always a serious conversation to be had with a smile. So keep that up. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always good to hear a blessing from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks so much for listening. Special thanks to Liz Hanlon for co-writing I'm No Pillar of Salt, to Emil Stern and E. Rose for their help in producing this episode, and to Jessica Hanna Sweedler for her help on social media. You can find I'm No Pillar of Salt and all the other songs in this song cycle on most platforms that stream or download music, including Spotify and Apple. In the next episode of The Rest is Commentary, I will be talking with Rabbi Mel Gottlieb. We'll be discussing the significance of the letters Aleph and Bet in the Torah, gratitude, integrating opposites to achieve wholeness in Kabbalistic and Jungian thought, looking for God within, the role of memory in spiritual growth, the spiritual significance of listening, balancing compassion and discipline, and so much more. Please join us.